Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere wet and cold and hungry. You're waking up in a medieval village that's already seen too much rain. The thatched roof above your head is dripping again. The sky, same as yesterday, same as last week. Heavy, bruised clouds spilling rain like they've forgotten how to stop. Your boots squish before you even step outside. No birds sing, no wheat rustles. The roads are mud, the air's damp, and everyone looks like they've had a bad sleep, and not just last night. You won't believe this, but in this story, the sun actually forgets how to be summer. Alright, before you get too cozy, go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe, but only if your heart says yes. And hey, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is. I always love seeing how far this little history campfire reaches. Dim the lights, get that fan going for some background vibes, and let's chill into tonight's little adventure. You're standing at the edge of a barley field that shouldn't look like a marsh. It's early June, and you've seen nothing but clouds since April. You should be checking on sprouting shoots, swatting gnats from your arms, brushing the dust off your tunic. Instead, your boots sink into spongy ground, and your breath clouds in the morning air. You glance up at the sky, grey, not menacing, just unchanging. It's been raining so much that the village well overflowed. The barley's already turning brown before it reaches your knees. The sheep refuse to graze. Some wheeze and limp like old men. No one wants to say it, but you've heard it before. The old ones mutter it in doorways when they think no one's listening. This is how it started back in my mother's time. Your neighbour Elric used to joke he could smell a good season from the soil. This year, he just wrinkles his nose like something's rotting. Maybe it is. The woodpile behind your cottage is too damp to light, so your fire barely hisses. Everything smells like mildew, even sleep. The mill hasn't turned in weeks. Not for lack of grain, it's just clogged with wet flour. That smell of scorched wheat from fresh bread. Gone. Replaced by the stink of mould and moss. You start noticing how people talk less, how they chew slower, how they count, under their breath, the sacks they've got left. One morning the village reeve knocks on every door. He doesn't say much, just tells everyone to be mindful of the stores. You know what that means. Ration, stretch. Pretend the smokehouse isn't already close to empty. You try to dry some wheat on the eaves of your roof. It clumps, sprouts. You feed it to the chickens, but even they pick at it like it's suspicious. A few days later, the chickens are gone. You didn't ask where they went. The worst part isn't the food. Not yet. It's the waiting. Everyone's waiting for summer to arrive like a late friend, but days keep passing and the sky stays closed. You wonder, what if it never comes? What if this is just it now? The older women still walk out in the morning to test the soil with their fingers. Their hands come back mud-soaked, heads shaking. Too wet to plant. Always too wet. You start noticing the moss growing up the church stones, the mould creeping along your window frame. The bread gets darker, harder, thinner. Your joints ache from the cold, and your fingernails look blue some mornings. No one calls it famine yet, but it's not far off. You go to sleep each night wondering if tomorrow will be dry. It never is. The strange thing is how fast everyone starts adjusting. At first, it was just a bad spring, then a late summer, then an early autumn without any warmth in it. And now, your body tenses each time you hear the rain hit the thatch, like you're bracing for something even worse. You remember when the blacksmith used to hum as he worked. Now you pass his forge and it's quiet. He's sitting inside, sharpening the same blade over and over, not for sale, just to pass the hours. Iron rusts faster in this damp air, and even the tools seem tired. One morning, you walk to the village edge where the road once turned firm by midsummer, but it's still a quagmire, a sucking mess of wheel ruts and hoof holes. A cart sits tilted in the muck, its axle cracked, the oats inside gone to mush. No one even bothers to fix it anymore. A few fields away you see something stranger. Geese waddling freely across a field of drowned barley. Not a soul bothers to catch them. The effort outweighs the gain, and besides, who wants meat that's been feeding on rot? At the communal oven, the line grows shorter, not because people aren't baking, but because there's nothing left to bake. Grain stores are being watched like treasure chests. The baker you once shared drinks with now counts every sack like it's gold. You hear whispers about a farm 2 valleys over that tried to dry rye using hot stones. The whole batch turned black and sour. They fed it to pigs, and the pigs died. You're not sure if it's true, but you believe it. Elric, the neighbour with the good nose, starts sleeping with a blade under his cot. You only know because he tells you. Eyes half-lidded, voice too calm. Not for people, he says, for animals, if they come sniffing. That night, as you lie in bed listening to wind and rain, you think about how everything used to smell different. Remember the scent of baked apples, of sun on wool. Now, it's always damp straw, spoiled grain, and that strange mineral bite in the air like wet iron. You get up in the dark and check your sacks. 1 of barley, half of oats, a few turnips in a bucket. That's it. Then you hear a voice outside, just someone passing by. Feet squelching in the mud, not stopping, not knocking, just walking, slow and quiet, like they're measuring whose home looks full and whose looks desperate. You don't sleep that night. By week's end, the reeve makes another round. This time he brings 2 men with spears. We'll be watching the grain house more closely, he says. The locks were tampered with. No one looks surprised. No one asks who did it. Instead, they just glance at the sky again and wonder how much worse this can get. And as you stand at the edge of your fields, nothing but green sludge and broken stalks, you realise something else. The worst part isn't just the hunger, or the cold, or the silence. It's the not knowing when it ends. The calendar says it's June, but your bones say November. You pull your cloak tighter as another gust of wind cuts through the valley. It's supposed to be summer, your busiest, sweatiest season, when crops stretch tall and green and everyone's too sunburnt to argue. But now the air smells of wet clay, and the earth squelches under your heel like a sponge. You haven't felt truly dry in weeks. People stop talking about weather. They just glance at the clouds and move on. 1 day of sun had come 2 weeks ago. Just one. Clothes were hung, beans were planted in desperation, and smiles even returned for a few hours. But by nightfall, the sky had folded in again, heavy and unrelenting. The worst part, it's not even storming. There's no dramatic thunder, no lightning streaks to at least give the sky some flair. Just endless, misting drizzle. A grey curtain that never lifts. You head to the fields again, not because there's anything to do, but because that's what you've always done. A few neighbours are out too, poking uselessly at the mud. A woman mutters about planting late barley if the weather turns. You don't answer. You both know it won't. Your boots sink deeper than last week. Some patches of land are so waterlogged they reflect your own pale face back at you. You step around what used to be neat rows of vegetables, now just twisted green knots under a film of standing water. Further up the hill, the old orchard hasn't bloomed at all. Not a single apple on any tree. You recall that last summer, the branches were so heavy with fruit they had to be propped up with sticks. This year, they're bare skeletons. You pick up a handful of soil out of habit. It's cold, slippery. You squeeze it in your palm. No crumble, no life, just a mess. You toss it and wipe your hand against your tunic, which is just as wet. Back in the village, the mood has shifted. It's quieter now, not from shock, but from conservation. People save their voices, their steps, their smiles. The smith leaves his forge cold to save fuel. The cooper doesn't make new barrels. Why bother? There's nothing to fill them with. You catch two men from the next hamlet arguing about a patch of land, each swearing it was their uncle's. Doesn't matter really. The land isn't producing anything. But claiming a plot, even a dead one, means holding on to the idea of tomorrow. People need that right now. You try not to laugh when you hear someone say, well, the rain will pass. Because it won't. Because it hasn't. Not in 2 months. And as the drizzle continues, light, harmless, and utterly merciless, you realise something simple but terrifying. The season is gone. Summer didn't come late. It didn't come at all. The old patterns begin to dissolve. You used to measure time by the fields, sowing, growing, cutting, threshing. Now time is just grey days stacked on top of one another, like rotting firewood. The bell still rings in the village, square, but nobody hurries. There's nowhere to go. The rhythm of the land is broken, and with it, the rhythm of your life. You find yourself staring at puddles, listening to the hollow slap of dripping eaves, noticing how the moss now creeps halfway up the walls of your home. No one tells stories by the hearth anymore. The hearth is rarely lit. What little grain was planted early hasn't survived. The ears are stunted, yellowed, curled in on themselves like they were too ashamed to grow. And the later plantings? They've drowned. Whole fields gone under before they ever had a chance. One afternoon, the Reeve poster board near the grain store. A list of families next to their rations. No one speaks as they read it. You stand behind a man you've known since childhood. He stares at his name for a long time. Then he walks away. No one complains. Not out loud. Complaints take energy, and that's in short supply now. The rains haven't just stolen the harvest. They've stolen the future. Without a proper yield, there's no seed for next season. You overhear two farmers debating whether to eat their stores or try to plant them again. Neither choice is safe. The road to the next town is still passable, but barely. A merchant's cart got stuck last week and had to be hauled out with 2 oxen, both of which collapsed from exhaustion afterward. The cart was full of salt fish, most of it spoiled. Still, there are rumours, always rumours. A village downriver supposedly got a decent rye crop. Drier soil, they say, closer to the old stream bed. Another claims someone grew onions in pots indoors. You start watching your neighbours' windows at night, wondering who's still cooking. You begin to notice new sounds. The grumbling of stomachs in the middle of a sentence. The way people sigh more often when standing up. The tightness in their faces when someone mentions the word harvest. One evening you find yourself counting what's left in your sack by candlelight. You try to calculate how far it can stretch. Maybe with watered porridge. Maybe with some wild greens. Maybe. You fall asleep hungry that night. Not starving, just hollow. Like your body's making room for a meal that won't come. And outside, the rain keeps falling. Not hard, not loud, just steady. As if it doesn't even know what it's doing anymore. You used to smell bread baking by mid-morning. Now the air in the village is still, heavy with damp straw and the faint tang of old grain. No one bakes unless they must. Every handful of flour is measured like coin, and even then, the dough barely rises. You pass by the communal oven and see only one family using it. The smell? Acrid. Burnt husks and wet ash. You don't linger. The baker, Thomas, once wore a soot-blackened apron and kept flour in his beard. Now he just wears the same patched cloak each day and weighs out portions from a locked chest. His loaves are smaller, denser, more sour than sweet. And there's a new addition to them, something dark and bitter. You ask him once. He doesn't answer. You've started to hear the term famine bread. Not openly, not yet. But it drifts through conversations like smoke. Famine bread is stretched with ground-up peas, beans, even weeds. Some folks mix in sawdust or ground bark. Others whisper about loaves made with boiled linen rags and ashes, dried hard and scraped clean. The kind of things you wouldn't feed a dog last year. This year, it's a meal. A neighbour offers you a slice. You take it. Chew slowly. It sticks in your teeth. Tastes like soil and iron and something vaguely sour, like it remembers being alive but didn't enjoy it. You thank him anyway. A few brave souls still try to bake the old way. One woman tries honey loaves with what little sweet root she has left. They burn. Another tries to steam bread in cloth over a fire, but the cloth catches. The results are blackened lumps, steamed and scorched at once. Prices, of course, are climbing. Bread that once cost a handful of copper now trades for salted butter or 2 days' labour. Some have taken to bartering. 2 eggs for half a loaf. But there are no eggs and not many loaves. Every home smells like boiled water. Not broth, just water. You start noticing what's missing more than what's there. No smell of yeast rising. No soft chatter around ovens. No laughter from children waiting for crusts. Just chewing. Silent, deliberate chewing. The village elders speak softly in corners about rationing. Again, they'll have to start dividing the flour stores by spoonful. Someone mentions tightening the rules on how much bread each family can take. You glance at the list on the wall. Your name's still there, for now. You try baking your own once with a mixture of oats, nettles and bean husk. The dough is more paste than batter. It bubbles strangely as it bakes. When you pull it from the fire, it smells burnt and green. You eat it anyway. Your stomach cramps by nightfall. Thomas has started keeping his door bolted. Someone tried to take a sack last week. He didn't say who. But his shop now has a bar across the inside and a spear leaning against the back wall. You wonder how long until the oven itself goes cold. The word bread starts to mean something different now. It's not just food, it's a symbol of safety, of control, of who has and who doesn't. You notice people glancing sideways at those who still carry full satchels. There's suspicion in every shared glance, every meal eaten in public. One evening you hear shouting near the storehouse. 2 men arguing. One accuses the other of hoarding flour. The other denies it. But everyone watches as he clutches his pack a little too tightly. Later, someone says they saw him selling crumbs to travellers from the next village. You don't ask what happened to him. You start keeping a stone in your pocket. Not for protection, just as weight. Something to grip when your stomach twists and there's no meal in sight. Strange how quickly you learn to distract your body. A handful of cold water, a mouthful of boiled weeds, a long walk around the edge of the fields. Speaking of weeds, some are getting popular. Dandelion roots, chickweed, even dock leaves. Anything vaguely edible has become part of the local cuisine. You see a man chewing on wood sorrel and muttering about its lemony taste, as if he's a merchant again, selling flavour instead of surviving it. Then there's the rye. You know something's wrong the first time you eat the new batch. You chew and then lightness, a buzzing in the ears. Later that night your dreams feel strange, too vivid. Your neighbour wakes up screaming the next morning, swearing his hands are covered in fire. They aren't. Someone whispers the word ergot, a poison from spoiled grain, not enough to kill, but enough to blur the edges of reality. Thomas tries to sort out the good sacks from the bad, but the rains have soaked everything. Mould blooms fast. Spores don't care about hunger. Still, you keep eating it. That's the strangest part. Everyone does, even knowing what it might do. Because hunger beats reason. Because something in your gut craves anything. Even madness tastes better than emptiness. On market day, the stalls look like theatre props. Crates stacked with empty sacks. Apples carved from turnips. Someone tries to sell cakes made of boiled acorns and crushed snail shells. You stare at it too long and feel ashamed. Bartering becomes stranger. A boiled root for a woven patch, a splintered cartwheel for a handful of barley, a tin cup for a broken comb. One woman trades a winter cloak for 3 loaves of brown bread and walks home in the rain like it didn't matter. It's not just the scarcity that's changing people, it's the constant hum of uncertainty, of not knowing which bite might be your last decent one, of watching flour darken overnight, of finding mouse droppings where you swore you'd sealed the lid tight. One night, you stare at your last 2 loaves. You don't eat them, you just look at them, like they're visitors, like they might vanish if you turn away. That's what bread means now. The animals were supposed to outlast you. That's what you used to believe. When people went hungry, they'd rely on their livestock, milk, meat, eggs, fat. The beasts were backup, insurance. But the rains didn't spare them either. It starts with the coughing. You hear it from the pen behind Elric's cottage. A sharp, wet rasp from a heifer that once pulled his cart. She wheezes with every breath, her flanks heaving like bellows. By the 3rd day she won't stand. Elric tries to warm her with straw, rubs her legs with garlic oil, even mutters to her under his breath like she might understand. She dies before sunrise. The soil's so wet there's no point trying to dig. He just covers her with brush and walks away. You try not to think about it until your own hens stop laying. At first, you blame the cold. Then you blame the feed. Then, when one of them dies suddenly, you stop looking for a reason. You just wrap the body in old cloth and set it aside. You tell yourself you'll bury it when the ground is less waterlogged. But you don't. Word spreads that the animals are catching it, whatever it is. Some say it's the mould, others say it's the wet hay or the rot in the troughs. You've heard talk of cows birthing still, lambs born with twisted legs, and pigs with strange blotches on their bellies. No one knows what's causing it, but everyone sees the result. Empty pens and quiet pastures. In better years the barn was your sanctuary, a warm place full of rustling straw, contented grunts, and the occasional clink of a milk pail. Now it smells like sour rain and old fur. You find yourself checking the animals more often, just to make sure they're still there. The oxen that survived are thin, their ribs visible under matted hides. They move slower. One of them slips in the mud pulling a cart and doesn't get back up. It's the 3rd this month. Without animals, you realise how much heavier everything becomes. No milk means no butter. No manure means fields grow poorer. No carts pulled means more on your back. You haul firewood in shifts now, and the ache in your shoulder stays long after the load's gone. The butcher, whose smokehouse once drew envy from the next village, hasn't opened in weeks. His knives sit on the wall, untouched. He used to boast about his salted hams and dried sausages. Now he just shakes his head when someone knocks, and sometimes doesn't answer at all. And then there's the smell. It's faint, but it's there. Not death, not exactly. More like damp fur, cold dung, and something sickly sweet beneath it. You catch whiffs of it in the fields, the barns, even on your own tunic after a day of tending the pens. You don't say anything. No one does. What would you say? That the very animals that once kept your family fed are now just more mouths to worry over? Or worse, more signs of a season that isn't coming back? You try selling one of your goats, not for profit, just to lighten the burden. She's old, but steady. A few years ago, she gave enough milk for your household and the neighbours too. You walk her to the edge of the village with a rope around her neck and a knot in your gut. The merchant from the next hamlet eyes her like he's inspecting firewood. He presses her ribs, frowns at her hooves, then offers a sack of parched oats and a pot of lard. You take it. He doesn't smile, neither do you. As you head home, the air feels heavier. The oats aren't much, but they'll stretch your meals. The lard, though, Real fat is treasure now. You imagine it melting in the pan, sizzling, just enough to make turnip porridge feel like food again. That evening, for the first time in weeks, you smell something savoury in your own kitchen. You eat slowly, carefully. Not because you're trying to savour it, but because your stomach isn't used to being full. The next day, you check the remaining animals again. The younger goat shivers in the corner of the pen, staring at nothing. You leave her be. Then come the flies. They gather in places they shouldn't. The underside of a sheep's tail, along a cow's nostrils, even around the feed sacks. They don't bite. They just hover. Watch. Wait. You remember something a trader once said, "Flies know first." At the time, it was a joke. Now it feels like a warning. The miller's mule collapses one afternoon and never gets up. He calls it wind in the belly, but you know better. No one says the word sick anymore. It's too close to spoiled, and no one wants to think their animals might be beyond saving. Even the dogs are thinner. You see one trotting past the village well, its ribs casting shadows against its fur, a limp in one leg, but still carrying a bundle of rags in its jaws like treasure. It growls when someone gets too close. There's a kind of silence that only comes when the animals stop making noise. The coops are still, the pens are quiet, the pasture is bare. You used to wake to rooster calls and cows lowing. Now you wake because you're cold, or hungry, or dreaming of food you can't describe anymore. You find yourself watching the sky less and watching the animals more. One day, your last hen doesn't come out. You open the coop, and she's there, huddled in the corner, feathers puffed, eyes dull. You don't touch her. Just close the door and walk away. There's no more use pretending you're managing this. You're not. The livestock were the last buffer between your table and the void. Now, that buffer is paper thin and getting thinner. You don't cry. You don't even feel panic anymore. Just that cold clarity that comes when you know things have shifted past the point of mending. And you wonder, how much longer before the people start fading too? You never thought you'd be grateful for nettles. Not long ago they were just a nuisance. Plants to avoid, sharp to the touch, a stinging reminder to stay on the path. But now you find yourself searching the hedgerows for their jagged green leaves, handling them with care, boiling them until the sting disappears and something like soup appears instead. It's not satisfying, it's not filling, but it's warm. And warm counts for more than you expected. You're not alone in this. Each morning, you see more figures moving through the woods, slow, deliberate, hunched toward the ground. They carry baskets, satchels, even old pillowcases. They're not hunting, they're foraging. The forest has become the village's new pantry, but the shelves are nearly bare. You join a group near the old stone wall where mushrooms tend to sprout. You remember being told as a child, if the cap curls down, it's safe. If it curls up, stay away. Now, no one seems to remember which is which. You watch a woman sniff each fungus before dropping it into her bag. She looks tired. Everyone does. Roots are dug up with spoons, knives, bare hands. Wild onions, if you're lucky. Burdock. Dandelion root. Even tree bark is scraped, dried, ground into a gritty flour substitute. You've eaten bark bread 3 times now. The texture is unforgettable, like chewing a log and swallowing regret. One man finds a patch of sorrel and eats it right there, leaves and all. It stains his teeth green. He grins at you and says, "Tastes like lemon." You nod and take a bite. He's right. It does. Sharp, acidic, alive. You haven't tasted anything that bright in weeks. Some try boiling thistles. Others roast cattail roots over smoky fires. A few people have taken to drying nettle stems, crumbling them into powders to stretch what little flour they still have. The results are more like paste than dough, but paste is still food. Technically, even the animals in the forest seem hungrier. You spot a fox one morning, thin, nervous, darting through a clearing. It doesn't even flinch at your presence, just sniffs a patch of grass and moves on, tail low. You wonder if it's looking for the same mushrooms. Some villagers whisper about eating frogs, others mention snails. You don't ask if they've tried it. You don't want to know, but you catch yourself staring a little longer at the pond near the willows. Back in the village, the firewood pile shrinks faster now. Gathering sticks becomes a second job, one you have to do wet and shivering. You bring in armfuls each evening, fingers numb, sleeves soaked. They barely last the night. In better years, the forest was a boundary, the edge of things. Now it's a lifeline. And like all lifelines, it's beginning to fray. Each day you venture further, searching for something new, something edible, something no one else has already stripped away. You never thought survival would smell like moss, mud and boiled nettle, but it does. You learn quickly that hunger changes taste. What once made you gag now goes down with barely a flinch. A gritty broth made from boiled acorn caps, porridge thickened with powdered thistle root, tea from pine needles. You sip each as if it were stew from a lord's table. Your standards shrink day by day, without permission. There's a man named Haldrick who swears he can make anything edible. He shows you how to dry lichen on a hot stone, then grind it with nettle seeds. The result looks like green dirt. You spoon it into your mouth anyway, and to your surprise, it's not terrible. Not good either, just possible. That's the new category of food now. Not good, not bad, just possible. Your teeth hurt more these days. You're not sure if it's the cold or the chewing of bark and gritty flour substitutes. Maybe both. You hear someone joke that soon the village will have no teeth left and you laugh. But you also press your tongue against your molars just to be sure. And still, some cling to pride. You pass by one cottage where the woman insists on using her mother's recipe for mash cakes. She still adds salt, still shapes them into perfect circles before baking them on the hearth. But they're made of dried cabbage and mashed roots, and they crumble when touched. She serves them anyway, head high. You admire that. You also think it's madness. Trading has changed too. Not just what's traded, but how. There's no market square anymore. It's become informal, quiet. You leave a small bundle near someone's door and hope something appears in return. One day, you trade a pouch of nettle flour for a chunk of preserved meat. You don't ask where it came from. That's the rule now. No questions, no stories, just thanks. One evening, as the sun disappears behind the tree line, so faint it's just a pale smear, you return from the forest with a bundle of mushrooms, 2 roots and a sore back. You expect disappointment like usual. But tonight's soup, watery, bland, smoky, feels like a victory. You eat slowly, letting the warmth settle deep in your belly, and for a few moments it almost feels like a real meal. You look around the room. There's not much left, but the spoon is warm in your hand. The fire crackles low. The door is closed. That's enough for now. Then you hear it. A rustling near the back wall. You freeze. Just a rat. Or maybe the wind. Or maybe someone testing the latch again. You grip your spoon like a weapon until the noise fades. No one speaks of it openly, but everyone knows. The deeper into famine you go, the thinner the lines between foraging and theft, between hunger and desperation. For now, you're still on the right side of that line. You're still making soup. You're still sleeping with both eyes closed. But that could change. The forest is nearly stripped. The ground stays wet. And your body tells you, more urgently each day, that nettles aren't going to cut it forever. You stand outside the manor gates looking at the grain store. Not because you think you'll get any. You won't. But because it's there, dry, guarded, sealed behind iron hinges and thick timbers. Just seeing it feels like remembering how things used to work. there's always a manor, always a lord, and always, in times like this, a ledger. You've seen the steward flipping through it, quill scratching along lines of names, weights, debts, taxes. Grain is no longer measured in bushels, it's measured in loyalty, in usefulness. They say the Lord has enough stores for the year, maybe 2, but he's rationing carefully. Bread is for guards, barley is for horses, peasants wait their turn. You know someone who works the granary now. Oswin. He used to mend boots. Now he stacks sacks and watches villagers with wary eyes. You wave at him once, out of habit. He doesn't wave back. A boy tries to sneak in one night, scales the back wall. He's caught, not punished, just turned away. But now there's a dog posted at the entrance, and more spears. You hear that some manors have set tolls. Coins don't matter. They want labour, or wool, or meat, or secrets. Someone traded their last silver ring for a half sack of rye. Someone else offered up a relative's name, swearing they were hiding grain in the cellar. You start noticing who has calloused hands and who doesn't. The ones who work near the manor come back quieter. Their faces flatter. They've eaten, yes, but something in them's gone soft and cold, like bread left out in the rain. Meanwhile, a new phrase is whispered through the village. The wolves are eating. It doesn't mean cannibalism. It means inside the manor life still moves. Fires stay lit. Meat roasts in kitchens. Boots are dry. You can hear it sometimes. Cutlery, distant laughter, the neighing of horses well fed. It's not exactly joy, but it's activity. A heartbeat. And it makes your own silence feel sharper. You once did repair work in the outer stables. You wonder if they let you back in now, maybe to patch a roof or reinforce a fence. You think about offering, but then you remember the look Oswin gave you, or didn't give you, and you hesitate. Some villagers still believe in asking. They line up near the gates, caps in hand, waiting to be seen. A steward comes out twice a week to take names, promises to pass the request along. The line grows shorter each time. A woman you know, Marta, who once sang as she spun flax, gets turned away after waiting 2 hours. She walks home barefoot in the rain. No one asks what she asked for. No one wants to know the answer. You realise the manor is more than a building now. It's a symbol of how close power is and how far it stays. You head back down the hill, your stomach hollow, your sleeves wet. Behind you, a torch glows behind a slit window. It flickers once, then disappears. You start noticing how the manor walls have grown taller. Not literally. They're still the same mossy stones, still patched with the same ivy, still topped with the same dull iron spikes. But they feel taller now, more distant, more permanent, and what lies behind them might as well be another world entirely. No one talks about storming the grain store, not seriously, not out loud. But you hear it in people's silence, in the way they glance up the hill when no one's looking, in the way tools are sharpened just a little more carefully than needed, not for revolt, not yet, just preparation. Instead, there's bargaining. One man offers to haul firewood to the kitchens, 20 bundles a week. He gets half a sack of split peas. Another, an old weaver, trades his last roll of wool for dried beans. You start keeping a mental list of what things are worth now. A day's labour, a hunk of turnip, a rabbit pelt, maybe a wedge of cheese, a whole sheep. That'll get you seen by the steward himself, but some offers go unspoken. One widow leaves a clay bowl of boiled roots on the steps outside the gate, wrapped in a clean cloth. She doesn't knock. She just walks away. The next morning, the bowl is gone. So is a pouch of barley, tied with twine, left in its place. People begin mimicking that method. Quiet trades in the dark. The manor doesn't acknowledge them, No words, no thanks. Just the system, humming quietly. No contracts, no ledgers, just hunger. You see Oswin again one afternoon. He's hauling a cart down the path toward the lower village. It rattles with sacks and sealed pots. You nod to him. This time he nods back. He's thinner like everyone else, but cleaner, drier. There's less desperation in his step. You wonder if that's what grain does now, more than feed. It changes how you walk. That evening, by candlelight, you look over your tools, a rusted spade, a few iron nails, a coil of fraying rope. Not much, but maybe enough to trade. You think of offering to patch the barn roof, or sweep the manor courtyard, or chop fallen branches after the next windstorm. You hesitate. Because here's the truth. Working for the manor means safety. Yes, but also silence. The kind of silence that settles behind your ribs. You've seen it in others. They eat, they sleep, they stay warm, but they don't talk anymore. Not really. You're not ready for that. Not yet. Still, that night your stomach growls louder than usual. You bite your knuckle to drown the sound, and the next morning you find yourself walking toward the manor, not to beg, not to trade, but just to look again. Because in this famine, even hope begins to wear a uniform, and sometimes it smells like barley cooking somewhere you'll never reach. By now the market square is barely recognisable. It used to be the beating heart of the village, muddy, sure, but lively. A place where voices tangled with the clatter of pots, where traders haggled with grins and half-truths, where bread smelled warm and gossip ran fast. But now? The stalls are skeletal. The goods, if you can call them that, sit under dripping cloths. The air smells not of spice or roast meat, but of damp burlap and sour oats. You still walk through it, mostly out of habit. A few others do too, shoulders hunched, eyes scanning for anything they haven't already seen. A pot of cracked beans, a bundle of herbs so limp they look like river weeds, a lone rabbit hanging from a string, likely caught 3 days ago. A man offers you salted beef. You ask how old it is. He smiles with too many teeth and says, "Depends how you cook it." You walk on. Another stall displays what looks like jam. Turns out it's mashed turnip with boiled plum skin for colour. No one's fooled, but a few people buy it anyway. It's something to put on bark bread. Something that pretends to be flavour. You notice the old currency isn't working anymore. No one cares about coins. They clink uselessly in pockets now, unless you can melt them into nails. What people want is stuff. Things that solve problems. Dry wood, a knife, a woolen sock with only one hole. Behind one stall, someone's selling a powder made from dried fish bones and crushed nettle seeds. It smells awful, but promises strength. You watch as 2 men argue over the last pouch. One walks away empty-handed, muttering. The other walks away coughing. Near the well, a boy, older than he looks, offers miracle broth. He's got a pot of hot water over a tiny fire into which he's dropped chopped weeds, some salt, and, judging by the smell, shoe leather. He sells it by the ladle. You try it. It's hot. That's about the only good thing you can say. But it coats your stomach like a lie you want to believe. People don't talk much in the market now. There's no time for chatter. Just short words, tight nods, quick glances to see if someone else is about to grab the last turnip. Even laughter feels dangerous, like it might draw attention you don't want. Still, the square remains a kind of meeting place, a fragile centre. You hear rumours there, whispers of nearby villages where the famine's eased, others where it's worse. Someone says the coast had a better barley yield. Someone else swears a trader passed through with flour 2 days ago, but was mobbed before reaching the next town. One woman walks from stall to stall selling remedies, nettles dried with vinegar or powdered root rubbed on the tongue. Another man offers talismans carved from ashwood to protect against hunger. You don't believe in charms, but you see one tied around a child's neck and feel something like longing anyway. By midday, the rain returns. Just a mist, enough to chase people under awnings, to soak the few remaining sacks, to blur the chalk prices scrawled on slate boards. You wrap your cloak tighter, keep walking, keep looking, because even a bad market might surprise you, and sometimes survival is just spotting the right lie at the right time. You learn to read the market not by what's for sale, but by what's missing. No eggs, no milk, no candles. Salt, once traded in generous handfuls, now comes in pinches. And honey, it's become a myth. Someone says a beekeeper downriver was robbed last week. Not for his bees, for the combs. Even the hives were smashed. You try not to think about what that means for next year. One morning, you spot a wheel of cheese sitting in the open like a relic from another age. Pale gold, untouched, its edges still waxy. You stop in your tracks. Is it real? Is it bait? The man behind the stall notices your stare. It's hard, he says, almost stone, but soak it long enough, and it softens. You ask the price. Your boots, he replies. You walk away barefoot. Back near the well, a crowd has gathered. Not around food, but a man with a knife. Not raised, just displayed. He's sharpening it against a rock slowly while reciting a list of services: protection, delivery, recovery. The meaning isn't hard to guess. He's a blade for hire and his price isn't coin. You realise then that the market has changed into something beyond trade. It's become a performance of resilience. People barter not just goods, but the image of survival. A clean shirt signals strength. A loud voice suggests plenty. Someone who smiles too easily gets watched. Someone who frowns too long gets avoided. You pass a woman with mud-stained hands arranging bunches of herbs in neat bundles. You recognise most of them: yarrow, wormwood, mint. But one is unfamiliar. She sees you looking. For sleep, she says. Good sleep. Heavy sleep. You keep walking. You spot Oswin again, this time buying a spool of thick thread and a bottle of vinegar. That's all. Just 2 things. He nods at the merchant, hands over a folded scrap of wool, then disappears up the lane without a word. You wonder what he's repairing, or preserving. It's hard to tell anymore where one person's survival ends and another's begins. You've stopped using the term food. It's too generous. What you find now is substance, material that passes through the mouth and doesn't kill you. Barley husks boiled to pulp, dried cabbage, a biscuit made of ashes and pea flour so bitter you have to chew it with your eyes closed. Still, it's something. And something these days is everything. You finish the market round with a pouch of moss, 2 roots, and a waxy knob of goat tallow. You trade a spindle for it. You haven't spun anything in weeks, but the illusion of productivity still holds value. As you step away, you look back once, not at the stalls, but at the people. Their movements are slower, now. Their limbs thinner, their eyes sharper. The market lives, but not in joy. It lives like a coal buried in ash, just enough heat to prove something's still there. Barely. You walk home clutching your bundle like treasure. Because it is. You wake before dawn, not because you want to, but because that's when the silence is safest. In daylight, the village has too many eyes, too many ears, too much tension, like a tightly drawn bow that never loosens. But in the early hours, there's just fog curling low over the path, the soft creak of a door hinge, the muted sound of someone else awake doing exactly what you're doing. Checking, counting, hiding. Your pantry isn't much. A sack with a handful of oats, a bundle of wilted greens, 2 knobs of dried root you're trying not to use. You run your hand along the shelf and feel the dust. That used to be flour. It used to coat everything. Now the wood is bare. You pull your cloak around your shoulders and step outside. Smoke curls from a few chimneys, thin, almost apologetic. No one can waste wood anymore, not unless they've got something real to cook. Fires are smaller, meals are quieter, conversations are whispered, and only when necessary. You walk toward the edge of the village, toward the house of someone you've avoided for weeks, Garrod. He was once a smith, built like an oak and twice as silent. But when the rains came, the forge cooled. His bellows cracked. Now he mends things, tools, carts, locks, anything people bring him in trade. You've heard rumours he has grain, that he stores it in clay pots buried under the floor. You don't want to believe it, but you've seen his arms, less thin than most. You've seen the puff of real smoke from his chimney. And last week someone said they heard a pot boiling in his house after sunset. That's luxury now. Boiling after dark. You knock lightly. No answer. Then the door opens a sliver. He looks at you with eyes that were never friendly, but now are something harder. Not cruel. Just finished. He says nothing. You offer the leather satchel you've been keeping dry under your bed. It's worn but well stitched. Useful. He takes it, opens it, turns it over in his hand. Still no words. Then slowly he reaches behind the door and produces a small pouch. Not big, not heavy. You don't need it to be. You nod. He nods. The door closes. You don't even look inside until you're halfway home. A handful of cracked rye. Maybe a cup's worth. Enough to make something that feels like a meal. Enough to remind your body it's not done yet. As you walk, you pass another door. Martyr's. Her shutters are closed, the steps swept clean. Too clean. You haven't seen her in days. You slow down, then move on. You don't knock. Back in your cottage, you pour the rye onto the table and run your fingers through it, one kernel at a time. You think about the stories people tell now, of neighbours stealing from each other, of food hidden in thatch roofs, of cellars rigged with noise traps. You haven't seen any of it firsthand, but you've started sleeping with a board wedged against the door, just in case. That night, the wind picks up again. It whistles low against the shutters, rattling the latch in a way that keeps your ears awake. You lie still in the dark, eyes open, staring at the beams overhead. The rye is tucked beneath the floorboard. You placed it there after cooking just enough for a thin porridge. Barely more than grey water with a trace of something solid. You didn't eat all of it. You wouldn't dare. Your stomach pulls tight anyway. Not from hunger exactly, just tension. The same tightness you've been carrying for weeks. You hear the creak of your own floorboards with every small shift. And then, maybe, another sound. Not inside, outside. A faint scrape. A step on gravel. You sit up and wait. Nothing. Just the wind. You listen a little longer before slowly easing back down. One hand stays wrapped around the handle of your fire iron. It used to be ridiculous. Arming yourself over grain. Now it's instinct. At dawn, you walk the perimeter of your cottage. The latch was jostled, but nothing's missing. Footprints in the mud. Could be yours, could be someone else's. You don't know anymore. No one knocks now unless they're desperate or dangerous. You pass Marta's house again. The shutters are still closed. A faint smell hangs near the doorstep. Something sour. Something left too long in the cold. You pause just long enough to wonder, then walk on. No one wants to be the first to ask about someone they haven't seen. In the village square, the Reeve is speaking in clipped sentences to a group of 5. Something about protecting the storehouse. He says, "We've had thefts." No one is surprised. He doesn't name names. You lock eyes with Oswin across the square. He nods once, then turns away before you can return it. He carries a short blade now, tucked beneath his belt. Everyone does. They're not weapons, not yet. Just tools, symbols, warnings. People no longer walk with others, they walk behind them. They walk in sight, not side by side. Friendships are still there, somewhere beneath the surface, but they've taken on a cautious shape. Even family ties have a brittle edge now. At the stream, someone set a line with hooks baited with what looks like bark. You'd laugh if you weren't standing nearby hoping it works. There hasn't been a decent catch in days. A fish would change everything, for one meal at least. On your way back, you spot someone near your shed. Just a figure. By the time you get close, they're gone. Nothing's missing, but a basket has shifted. A stone near your wall looks out of place. You don't chase. You don't shout. Instead, you pick up the basket, set it straight, and whisper into the air, "Not tonight." And maybe that's enough, because tonight you'll block the door again. You'll sleep near the hearth with your hand around that iron rod. You'll eat the rest of the rye tomorrow if the pouch is still there. You don't know who's watching, or how close they are, or if they're someone you once knew. But you do know this. Hunger makes everything quieter and heavier and slower, even trust. By now the roads have become strange. Not empty, never that, but changed. The travellers you pass no longer carry goods. They carry silence, bundled tight around their shoulders, same as their cloaks. Some come in carts, some on foot, some leading animals too thin to be called livestock anymore. But most just walk, and they don't ask for directions. You step aside as a group passes you at the edge of the lane. 3 people, mud-slicked, hooded, eyes forward. One has a bandaged hand. Another drags a basket with nothing in it. The third glances your way for half a second before moving on. You say nothing. Everyone says nothing these days. They're not traders. They're not pilgrims. They're not thieves. They're displaced. A word that sounds too clean for what's happening. Whole families now wander from hamlet to hamlet following rumours. A barn with a store of dried beans. A mill that's still grinding. A noble with soft hands handing out crusts to win favour. You've heard it all. You've believed some of it. You've walked the road too. The old stone markers that once pointed the way to nearby towns are now so caked in moss and grime that they might as well be blank. One has been scratched with a charcoal symbol, a triangle with a line through it. You ask a boy about it. He shrugs and says, "Bad place, nothing left there." You don't ask who left the mark, or when. Along one route, a pile of stones marks a resting place. Not a grave, just a spot where someone stopped moving. Someone else had the decency to cover them, or the guilt, hard to tell. Further on you pass what used to be a toll gate. No one mans it anymore. The wooden booth leans sideways, collapsed by weather and neglect. But people still slow as they pass, out of habit, as if the ghost of the tax collector might still demand something. You find yourself wondering what you look like to others. Not from vanity, just curiosity. Do you still walk with purpose? Or do you have that aimless look now, like the others? Do your steps still belong to your village? Or are you slowly drifting outward, farther and farther from where you began? You rest near an old tree stump where a signpost once stood. It's gone now, just iron nails rusting in empty wood. A merchant might have passed through here years ago. Maybe someone told jokes here once. Maybe a wedding procession came this way, flowers and ribbons fluttering in the wind. Now, it's just a place to sit and not be seen. Behind you, the road forks. One path leads deeper into the woods, the other toward the manor lands. You don't trust either. So you stay put for a while, chewing something dry and flavourless, listening to the trees, watching shadows that don't speak. Because now the roads don't connect places. They connect hunger to rumour, emptiness to hope. And every traveller you pass might be running toward something. or away from it. You start to recognize certain faces on the road, not by name, those are rarely exchanged anymore, but by shape, by limp, by rhythm. The man with the crooked shoulder who hums under his breath, the woman who drags one boot and carries dried thistle in a cloth, a boy who walks fast but always circles back when he hears a dog bark. No one forms caravans. That would suggest trust. Instead, you walk in proximity, close enough to be seen, far enough not to owe anything. The more people travel, the more things change in the village. Doors stay latched longer. Windows once left open for air are now shuttered day and night. Paths that used to lead to welcoming fires now end in silence. You pass houses with signs scratched into the wood, marks you don't understand, warnings or signals, maybe both. The travellers bring stories, but they're not told like tales anymore. They're muttered, fragmented. A manor in the next valley where the grain stores caught fire. A river town where guards stopped rationing and started hoarding. A roadside shrine piled high with turnips until it vanished in the night. One traveller swears he passed through a hamlet where people were boiling parchment, not reading it, eating it. Boiled it soft, he says, then drank the broth. He laughs like he's telling a joke. You don't laugh. The inn near the village gate used to house merchants. Now it houses nobody. The shutters bang loose in the wind. The front door hangs open. Someone scavenged the benches for firewood weeks ago. Still, people linger near it. Maybe out of habit. Maybe to shelter from rain. Maybe because even an empty inn pretends to be a place. You meet a woman on the path who carries nothing but a pot. No sack, no blanket, no coat. Just the pot strapped to her back with a strip of cloth. You don't ask her name or where she's from. You just nod, and she nods back. For a moment, you feel more connected to her than to people you've known for years, because everyone on the road now speaks the same language. Fewer words, more watching, more waiting. You keep walking, sometimes for no reason, just to move, just to see if something has shifted. You pass through glades where wild garlic once grew, now stripped bare, over streams that once held trout, now lined with empty traps, through lanes where the hedges whisper like they used to, but no longer hide berries. Eventually you circle back to the village. You always do. There's something in the act of returning, even when you bring nothing back but sore feet and colder hands. You step over the threshold of your cottage and glance once more down the road. No smoke on the horizon, no travellers coming this way, just that long, ribboned path of mud, waiting for someone else to follow it. And the terrible thought you try not to entertain, maybe the next person who leaves won't come back at all. By late autumn, the roads are quieter again, not because people are settled, but because most have nowhere left to go. The forests have been picked clean. The markets, if they still exist, offer more silence than substance. The manors don't take visitors unless you come with something they want. And so, the people on the move, the roamers, the seekers, are thinner now, fewer, tired in ways that don't show in the body anymore, only in the way they hesitate before speaking. You've taken to sitting outside your cottage in the early light, wrapped in a cloak that smells like mildew, watching the path. Sometimes you see a stranger pass. More often now it's someone you used to know, like Neil. You hadn't seen him since summer, when he left in a cart with his two brothers, a rope, and talk of following the river down to the port cities. He returns alone. The cart is gone. His face is gaunt, the beard overgrown, and he has the quiet, heavy eyes of someone who's seen things they won't share. He doesn't knock, just gives you a slow nod as he walks past. No one asks questions anymore, not because they don't care, but because the answers are all the same. Nothing there, nothing left, not worth the trip. The village has shrunk, not in size but in energy. The blacksmith's bellows are still. The kiln is cold. The children no longer play in the lane. Even the dogs bark less. There's nothing to bark at and no strength to spare. You notice people avoiding each other more, not out of anger, out of calculation. Every conversation risks a request. Every shared look could lead to a plea. And what do you say when someone you've known for years leans in and quietly asks if you have anything left? You've said no so many times that the word no longer stings, but you've stopped asking too. That's the trade. Sometimes someone disappears. Their door stays shut. Their chimney stays cold. People glance at it, then away. No one checks, not because they're callous, but because they're scared of what they'll find or not find. And yet, within this growing silence, new habits form. You notice how everyone walks slower now, not from weakness, but to make their footsteps last longer. How water is drawn more carefully from the well, as though the buckets might fracture under haste. How the tiniest scent, wood smoke, boiled herbs, toasted seed, makes everyone's head turn. There's a quiet man named Lothar who starts offering cracked pots of broth. He doesn't charge, he doesn't explain, just leaves them outside his door with a ladle. You're not sure where he gets the ingredients. You don't ask. You take one once and leave behind a bundle of dry kindling in return. It becomes a silent exchange, a code. The pot returns, full again the next week. Someone else leaves a strip of linen, a few pebbles arranged neatly. Nothing is said. Everything is understood. Even now, with stomachs tight and wood piles thinning, there's still a faint trace of community. But it's quieter now. It has to be. Some nights the village feels like a painting that's begun to fade at the edges. You walk through it slowly, almost reverently, past shuttered windows and sagging door frames. Lanterns are rare now. Oil is precious. And even candle ends are hoarded like coins. You carry a sliver of tallow wrapped in cloth, lighting it only long enough to find your footing on the stone steps, or to stir your soup without burning it. There's no curfew, just common sense. No one is out after dark unless they have to be. Shadows carry weight in lean times. You pause near the old grain store, long since emptied. The lock still hangs there, a rusted formality. The wood has warped from months of rain. Once it held hundreds of sacks. You remember the dust in the air as men hauled wheat in on their backs, their shirts soaked in sweat. Now, just silence and wood lice. But something else catches your eye. A flicker, faint, movement inside. You step back, slow, wait. Nothing emerges. Just a shape in the dark, watching the door the same way you are. You leave it be. In the morning you find muddy footprints around your shed, small ones, maybe a child, maybe not, it doesn't matter, the latch held. Nothing's gone, but you check the floorboard 3 times just to be sure. Later, you notice the smith's house has new smoke rising from it, thin, pale, but real. He hasn't opened the forge, there's nothing to forge. But someone's cooking something and that's enough to draw attention. You see others pretending not to notice, pretending not to breathe in the smell as they pass. You recognize the sensation in yourself, a kind of longing you thought you'd outgrown. It makes you wary. At the far end of the village, a man is building something, quietly, in the cold, with frozen fingers and a blunt chisel. It looks like a cart at first, but the wheels are uneven. Then like a sled, but without runners. You ask what it is. He shrugs. Something that moves. That answer makes sense now. It doesn't have to be useful. Just mobile. Just capable of going somewhere else, even if somewhere is a guess. You think often about your own mobility, how long you could walk, how far you could get. You've kept your boots in decent condition, waxed them with tallow, patched the soles. But the idea of leaving this place still feels like a dream that belongs to someone else. And besides, the roads are quieter now. Not because they're safe, but because they're empty. You still go to the stream each day, not for water, you've stored enough for now, but to see if it changes, if the frost has lifted, if any fish have returned, if the reeds have shifted in the current, anything. Because in a world that no longer gives answers, even small changes feel like news. Even the sound of water still moving, that slow, icy trickle, is enough to remind you that not everything is frozen, not everything is stuck, and some things still flow. You hear it first in the way people lower their voices at the edge of conversation. Not louder, not urgent, just lower, thicker, as if the words are heavier now, like they need to be dragged across the tongue before they're spoken. You're by the well when you catch part of it. Two men talking behind the tanner's shed. One says, "They didn't just run off. There was still food in the pot." The other doesn't reply. He just pulls his hood up tighter and walks away. You don't ask, because something is shifting again. Not in the weather, not in the grain store, in people. At first it's small, a glance held a moment too long, a door shut a little too quickly, the sense that someone is watching not because they care, but because they're measuring. The baker's shutters stay closed for 2 days straight. No smoke from the chimney, no footsteps inside. When Thomas finally reopens, his face is paler, and he doesn't greet anyone. Just sells 2 loaves, then disappears again. You hear someone mutter, "Must have found something new to mix in." You don't ask what they mean. You pass a cottage where the scent of roasting meat drifts faintly on the wind. Rich, oily, unmistakable. Your mouth waters before your brain catches up. There are no animals left, no pigs, no goats. You haven't heard a hen cluck in weeks, so what are they cooking? You tell yourself it's just an old stew, maybe a bone found buried, maybe salted scraps traded from afar. But still, your feet don't slow as you pass. You keep your eyes forward. The village is quiet, yes, but differently quiet now. Not the quiet of fatigue, the quiet of secrets, of closed doors and flickering eyes, of the growing realization that there may no longer be a clear line between survival and surrender. You meet Marta, at least you think it's Marta, near the stream. Her face is thinner, her voice rougher. She doesn't say much, just asks if you've seen anyone near her woodpile. You shake your head. She nods. Then she says something you can't forget. "If I catch them again, I won't yell next time." Not if it happens. When? You return home with that echo in your ears. Later that evening you hear footsteps near your door. Not hurried, not sneaky, just testing. You sit still by the hearth with a fire poker across your lap. You don't move. The steps pause. Then they walk away. The next morning you find a piece of your latch bent. Not broken, just tested. Your food is untouched. The rye under the floorboard remains. But something else is gone. The old tin bowl you use for measuring, you didn't hear them take it. You don't even care about the bowl. But that soundless theft feels louder than a scream. It wasn't hunger. It was a message. Someone had the time and clarity to steal something useless, just to show you they could. The fear isn't sudden, it creeps, not like a scream in the night, but like damp in the rafters, slow, spreading, settling in until it becomes part of the structure. You start double-checking the latch before bed, then triple-checking, then wedging a bucket under the handle, not because you think it will stop anyone, but because you'll hear it fall if someone tries to enter. You sleep lighter now, half in dreams, half in readiness. One night you wake to the sound of something small, maybe a knock, maybe a scrape. You sit up, heart pounding, eyes fixed on the doorway. You wait. Nothing. Then just the wind. But in the morning there's a smear on the outside wall. Mud or soot or something darker. A mark like a handprint with 2 fingers missing. You wash it away with snowmelt. Say nothing. Others have noticed things too. A sack moved. A door found ajar. A clay jug missing from a windowsill. The villagers don't accuse. They don't confront. They just start to carry themselves differently. Heads low, voices lower, eyes sharp. One woman begins locking her gate with a chain meant for oxen. Another keeps a knife visible on her belt even when fetching water. The old cooper boards up his windows entirely. He hasn't spoken to anyone in days. Oswin? He carries himself like a man waiting for permission to act. You pass him near the path and he simply says, "It's starting." No explanation, just that. And he's right. Something has shifted. It's not violence, not yet. It's the stage before that, when people stop believing they're safe and start wondering what they'd do to stay alive. You try to anchor yourself with routine, gathering twigs, checking traps, boiling whatever you can scavenge into something vaguely soup-shaped. But everything feels thinner, not just the broth, the sense of order, the sense that rules still apply. At the stream you find a small sack tied to a root. Inside, half a loaf, a bone, and a note with no writing. Just a symbol scratched into wood. A circle with a cross. It's not yours. You leave it untouched. But you walk a different path home. You pass Marta again. She doesn't speak this time. Just watches you walk by with her eyes that have stopped blinking so much. You nod. She doesn't. And later, as you sit by your cold hearth, staring into the ash, you understand something. This winter isn't just about food anymore. It's about boundaries, about how far people will go, not all at once, but in increments. A borrowed log becomes a stolen pail. A stolen pail becomes a tested door. And eventually a line gets crossed. You don't know who will cross it first, but you know it's coming. And that's what truly chills your bones. While your village tightens into silence, something strange starts to happen beyond the hedgerows. News begins to trickle in. Not rumours this time, but actual messengers. Not fast, not many, but enough to stir the air like the first breeze before a storm. You see one of them arrive. Mud-caked boots, a wax-sealed pouch, a ribbon on his shoulder. He's escorted by two men in padded cloaks, both armed, both underfed like everyone else, but still standing straighter than most. They don't stop to chat. They go straight to the Reeves house, and for hours afterward the door stays closed. By evening the whispers begin. The king's court is rationing grain. The port cities have shut their gates. A northern nobleman tried to requisition livestock from 5 villages and was turned away. His cart burned before it left the valley. It's not just your hamlet. The whole kingdom is cracking. You hear someone say the word war, but no one takes it seriously. What would they even fight with? Clubs carved from fence posts, bows with no arrows. Even conflict seems too expensive now. Still, there are signs. A young man from a neighbouring town appears in the village square with a scroll bearing the royal seal, red wax, smudged but still intact. He's calling for grain. Just a few bushels, he says, to be sent to the outpost near the border. To maintain order, he reads from a prepared line, voice quaking. The villagers stare at him. Not in anger, not disbelief, just weariness. One man laughs, a bitter, barking sound. Tell the outposts to eat their orders. The young messenger leaves with nothing. But the Reeve? He starts meeting privately with the manor stewards. The next week 2 carts are seen leaving town under guard. You don't know what's inside. But the horses pulling them look well fed. No one mentions it aloud, because everyone knows what was in those carts had to come from somewhere. The shift continues quietly. Men are conscripted to guard grain transports. Not many, just a few strong ones. You see Oswin among them, standing near the stables with a halberd and a stiff jaw. He doesn't meet your eyes anymore. The village notices, and soon other things begin to vanish. Barrels, nails, good rope. A cask of dried beans once seen near the cooper's shed is simply gone the next day. The explanation: requisitioned. No further detail given. You watch a neighbour try to argue with one of the men wearing the steward's badge. Just a soft disagreement, a question. The man, someone you've traded with before, places his hand on his knife. That's all it takes. The neighbour steps back. The conversation ends. That night, torches burn outside the manor gates. They say it's to keep the watch warm, but you know better. It's to remind everyone who still controls the walls. The torches stay lit for 3 nights. Not bonfires, just standing flames in iron brackets, flaring at the gate and on the watch posts reflected, in the puddles at their feet. You stand in your doorway and watch them from afar, small golden specks against a sky too clouded to show stars. They don't move, they don't flicker, they just burn, and so does the mood. You pass Marta on the lane the next morning. She nods toward the manor with her chin and says flatly, "They're preparing for something." You ask what. She doesn't answer. Later that day, a man you don't recognize arrives on a tall horse, well-dressed, in faded finery, cloak still wet from whatever village he rode through last. He speaks to the reeve, then the steward, then the grain guard. Oswin stands nearby, eyes downcast. You catch a piece of the conversation. Not enough to send forward. The roads are failing. The hill country refuses. He stays only an hour. When he leaves, the torch count doubles. That night you hear horses again. Quiet, moving slow, one after the other. Then a wagon creaking under weight. You peer out and see 2 guards moving barrels into the granary. Late, secretively. Something's being hoarded again, or hidden, or moved without permission. In the square, someone paints a mark on the wall behind the well, a single line, then 2 crossing slashes over it. It lasts until the next morning before someone scrapes it off. But it reappears the next day, painted lower this time, nearer the base of the wall. Quiet rebellion in the shape of a symbol. You don't know what it means, but you feel it. The people are watching, not with rage, not yet, but with calculation. You see it in the way a man touches his belt when a steward walks past, in the way someone refuses to sell tinder to a known guard, in the way the baker's wife starts handing out stale crusts to old friends behind the shed, not selling, just handing. Not loudly, but not hiding it either. A new kind of silence is settling in, not fear, but planning. There are fewer conversations, but more glances, more bundles tied under cloaks, more strangers sharing eye contact across alleyways, not comrades, not rebels, just people recognizing something in one another. We're near the edge. One evening you find a stone left on your doorstep, flat, scratched with the same symbol from the square wall. No note, no name, just the mark. You stare at it a long time, then turn it over and bury it in the ash bucket by the hearth. Not because you disagree, but because you're not ready, not yet. Outside, the torches are still burning, but the flames don't look like protection anymore. They look like targets. You never thought you'd see the monastery close its doors, not bar them with wood and iron, just quietly, gently shut them, like a book that no one plans to reopen. The outer gardens, once filled with orderly rows of herbs and squat cabbages, are overgrown now. Nettles climb the stone walls. The beehives are empty. Even the crows seem to have moved on. The brothers used to come down to the village once a week, carting barrels of root beer, dried sage and soft white cheese wrapped in linen. Now, no carts come, no greetings, no clinking of bells. You walk up the hill one afternoon drawn by habit. The gates hang slightly ajar, no guard, no scent of bread wafting from the kitchen. just wind. Inside the courtyard it's worse. The well is dry, not from drought, there's no shortage of rain, but from disuse. You peer into it and smell only old stones and wet moss. The flagstones are cracked with frost, and the ivy that once framed the cloisters now claws over them like a slow, silent reclaiming. You knock on the door to the scriptorium. No answer. You knock again. Still nothing. But the door is unlatched. You step inside. The air smells of candle soot and of mould. The scroll shelves are half empty. Some have been burned, perhaps for warmth, or packed up, or stolen. A lone bench lies overturned. A quill rests beside it, tip dry and split. In the main hall the benches are stacked. The candelabra is unlit. The pew cushions gnawed at by mice. You sit in the silence for a while, hearing only the wind pushing gently through the stone-slit windows. This place was supposed to last. It always had. Famine, storm, conflict. The monastery stood through all of it, a quiet fixture in a world that wouldn't stop shifting. And now, it's just another hollow building where footsteps echo too loudly. You find a small satchel on one of the pews. Inside, a spool of thread, a dried sprig of rosemary, and a heel of cheese so old it's gone rock hard. A bookmark of sorts? Or maybe an offering. Or just something someone couldn't carry anymore. You leave it there. On your way out, you pause beneath the archway. Above you, the old motto carved into the stone is still legible through the moss. Stability in devotion. You touch the words without thinking. The stone is colder than the air. Halfway down the hill, you look back. The windows look like eyes now. Empty. Watching nothing. And in the hush between your breaths, you realize even the places meant to endure have grown tired. You stop going up the hill after that. Not because it's forbidden. No one patrols the road to the monastery. But because there's no reason left. Whatever comfort that place once held has hollowed out. Its silence used to be sacred. Now it just feels abandoned. But others still go. You see them in the mornings, people you know by face but not by name, trudging up the path with empty sacks or small bundles. They return hours later, never speaking of what they found. You don't ask. You suspect they're not visiting for prayer. One evening, Oswin passes by your cottage, moving faster than usual. He is not alone. 2 men follow behind him, both carrying something long and wrapped in cloth. It might be tools, might be weapons. They don't look up, but they don't hide either. That's new. People used to whisper plans. Now they simply do things, and hope no one stops them. By week's end, the manor posts new notices. Parchment nailed to doors, slapped onto fence posts, pinned to the well beam. Unauthorized entry into noble lands will be met with force. You see the same handwriting in everyone. Tight, controlled, unfriendly. You wonder what prompted it. Then you hear about the grain barn. Not in your village, but 2 days' walk east. A fire, midday. Swift and exact. No injuries, just loss. Grain gone, roof collapsed, 2 oxen released and never seen again. Some say it was accident. Others say it was message. Then someone says, it started at the chapel end. And suddenly everyone gets quiet. Even now, months into this hunger, people don't speak openly about turning on the sacred. But something in the air has shifted. People are done waiting for divine intervention. They're not cursing the sky anymore. They're looking at doorways, storehouses, wagons. The power that once lived in silence now belongs to motion. You start noticing things disappear. Not stolen, just removed. Quietly. A barrel from behind the smithy. A crate from beside the granary. A rope line from the well. Marta begins speaking again. Short, clipped sentences, nothing warm. She tells you flatly, someone's organising. You ask who. She shrugs. Doesn't matter, just know who's watching you eat. That night, as you scrape the last of your nettle paste from the pot, you pause. You check the door, the shutters, you listen to the wind, then you move your last sealed jar, not far, just under a loose stone behind the hearth. A tiny act of caution, but it makes you feel better. You don't know if you're hiding it from a stranger or from someone who used to be your friend. And in the growing quiet of the village, where even the bells of the monastery have gone mute, you realise there's a difference between being hungry and being watched while you still have something left. The town used to smell like bread. That's what you remember most, stepping between carts, sidestepping puddles, brushing past aproned sellers shouting the price of cabbage or salted trout. Smoke from chimney ovens, steam from stew pots, the faint sweetness of baking flour clinging to the air. Even the mud had a warmth to it. Trampled, yes, but full of life. Now it smells like damp straw and grease-soaked cloth. You arrive in town before dawn, the sky still the colour of iron. The streets are quieter than you expected. No carts, no cries of greeting, just the squelch of your own steps and the occasional cough echoing from an alley. The gates hadn't been locked. That's what surprises you first. The second surprise is how fast you feel eyes on you. Not guards, not stewards, just people on doorsteps, behind warped shutters, watching. You walk past a tavern that once spilled laughter into the road every evening. The windows are dark now, boards nailed across the lower half. A single candle burns behind the glass, enough to cast silhouettes, not enough to invite company. Further down the main lane, someone's chalked marks on the walls, tallies, arrows, a few symbols you don't recognise, a triangle over a circle, a small X beneath a window frame. You try not to stare. You pass the bakery. It still stands. The sign creaks above the door, the paint faded. You remember standing in line there as a child, the warmth of the oven fogging the glass even in winter. Today, the windows are black. You push open the door. The bell above doesn't ring. It's missing. Inside, dust coats the counter. The hearth is empty. A few flour sacks lie in a corner, split and half scavenged. Someone's carved words into the counter with a knife. Last batch. St. Day, 1316. That was months ago. You leave quietly. The town square is worse. The fountain has run dry, choked with leaves and scraps of fabric. A wooden gallows stands at the far end, its rope limp in the wind. You're not sure if it's been used recently. You don't ask. What you do notice is how the stalls remain, half standing like skeletons. Someone's propped up a board and placed 3 shriveled turnips on it. No prices, no seller. You sit on a stone step and take out your own bundle. Dried greens, a lump of rye bread. You eat slowly, half from habit, half from guilt. Out of the corner of your eye, someone watches. A child, maybe, or just small, wrapped in rags. You look their way, and they vanish behind a wall. You don't call out. You just break the crust in half, wrap it in the cloth again, and leave it beside the fountain when you go. You tell yourself it's for someone who needs it more. You don't turn back to check. As you make your way back through the town, you realise just how much has unravelled beneath the surface. Not with fire, not with blood, just with stillness. Doors that used to creak from frequent use now hang crooked on rusted hinges. Cloth banners are still nailed above shop fronts, but the colours have bled into grey. You pass a cobbler's window where boots once lined up like proud soldiers. The display is gone. In its place, a single child's shoe, its sole split open like a mouth frozen mid-sentence. You stop near the old bathhouse, not to enter, just to listen. Once this place rang with the chatter of neighbours, the splash of buckets, the scrape of soap across stone. Now it offers only echoes. You hear dripping water, faint and irregular. A leak somewhere. No voices, just the sound of a town breathing shallowly. Near the far edge of the square, you find a row of barrels tipped on their sides. Inside one, moss. Another, rags. The last, bones. Small, picked clean, arranged in careful lines as if someone had tried to make sense of them. No one is around to explain. You glance up and realise something else. The chimneys here don't smoke anymore. No firewood, no fuel, just cold hearths and cold hands. Those still living inside these buildings have learned to make do with blankets, pressed bodies, silence. You pass two figures near the alley behind the smithy. They don't speak. One holds a pot, the other sharpens a stick. They glance at you, not hostile, just alert. You nod, they nod. That's all. At the edge of town you find a message scratched into the stone of a well. Don't wait for help. 3 words. That's all. And somehow they feel more honest than any scroll bearing a royal seal. You fill your flask anyway, even though the water tastes of metal. Then you shoulder your pack and start walking, out the same gate you entered, past the same broken wheelbarrow, past the same crow pecking at string. The road stretches out before you, long and quiet and wet. You don't know what you came to the town looking for. Hope, maybe. Evidence that someone still had a plan, a cure, a miracle. But what you found instead was this. A place not fallen, not burning, not screaming, but eroded. Slowly, patiently, like salt on stone. And in some ways that feels worse. Because fire can be put out, but rot seeps in. You adjust your cloak, tuck the remaining crust deeper into your satchel and keep walking. Because the town no longer asks you to stay, and you're not sure you'd be welcome if it did. You return to the village by twilight. Feet sore, cloak heavier with moisture than warmth. The trees whisper in their leafless way, and the path winds more than it used to, as if even the earth itself is uncertain where it's going. There's no one at the boundary marker, no cart, no patrol. Just the same muddy post tilted by months of rain, and the crooked wooden board someone carved with a single word, stay. It's not a warning, it's not even a command, it's a plea. And you wonder, was it meant for people inside the village, or for those outside it? Back among the cottages not much has changed. A new patch has been nailed over the blacksmith's roof. A pile of wood chips appears where Marta's goat pen once stood. The Reeves house now has 2 guards at the door, one of whom you don't recognise. He stares longer than he should. Still, no one speaks. You go inside and light a candle stub. The wick flares, wobbles, and settles into a lazy flame. It throws shadows that look like people you used to know. There's enough dried mash to make a small cake. It smells faintly of mildew and old mint. You eat it anyway, chewing slowly, letting the paste coat your teeth. Your body doesn't protest anymore. It's learned that warm counts more than pleasant. Outside, a strange sound, laughter, just one voice. Thin, sharp, echoing oddly in the wet air. You creep to the shutter and peer out. Someone standing near the square, arms raised to the sky. You can't make out who. It might be the butcher's cousin, or the cooper's oldest son. They're laughing like something cracked open in their chest and poured out in noise. No one else joins in. After a few minutes they fall quiet again and sit on the ground like it never happened. The laughter doesn't comfort you. It frightens you in a way you can't quite explain. Later that night, you wake to movement. A shape outside. A scraping sound. Not an intruder. Just someone digging in the thawing ground near the wall. You don't interrupt. If it were meant to be secret, it would have been quieter. If it were meant to be a threat, you'd know. It's just someone trying to do something. You remember when people used to solve problems with meetings, with words, with shared stew and arguments over firelight. Now things happen in corners, in shadows, in silence. A cracked window fixed with twine. A trail of grain across someone's floor. A coat worn inside out. Once a noble's, now passed hand to hand, stitch by hidden stitch. And still, no one says what they're thinking. Because what they're thinking is this: we're still here. And somehow, that's the strangest thing of all. You sit by the window more now, not for the view. There's nothing to see but fog, bare branches, and the occasional figure moving along the path like a ghost in poor boots. You sit because it feels like waiting, and waiting feels like something you can still do. Inside, your breath fogs in, the air. You've stopped lighting fires unless you're cooking. The smoke draws attention, and the smell draws envy. It's safer this way, quieter. You've learned to welcome the chill like a roommate you didn't invite but can't remove. There's a new rhythm to the village now. At midday, people emerge for brief errands. Eyes meet, nods are exchanged, but no one lingers. They carry bundles under coats, use fewer words, and walk like they're afraid of stepping too loudly on the stillness that holds everything in place. You've started noticing strange things. A pot hanging from a tree branch, a carved stick left upright in the mud, strips of cloth tied in a spiral around a gatepost. Not superstitions exactly, just gestures. People marking space, leaving signals, maybe messages, maybe warnings. You see Marta standing in her doorway one afternoon staring down the lane, not watching for anyone, just staring. She holds a broom that isn't sweeping anything. The bristles are worn through. But she stands there like the shape of her body and that posture is doing a job no one else can see. You nod to her. She doesn't move. By evening, someone's lit a fire behind the granary. That's new. Small, shielded from the wind, but it glows with purpose. You creep close enough to see two women kneeling by it, warming their hands. One of them adds a piece of leather to the pot, stirring slowly, gently, like it's soup. It might be. You don't interrupt. You leave a root vegetable near the log and step back into the dark. No thanks, no questions, just exchange. That's what kindness looks like now. Not words, not gifts, just the quiet act of not letting someone else starve alone. Later you pass the old granary wall and see a new mark carved near the base. A rough circle with a line through it. The same one from the town square. You reach out and touch it. Just to feel something carved by another hand. A sign that someone else stood here, made a choice, left a trace. It's hard to say if it means rebellion, or memory, or just that someone refused to disappear quietly. And maybe that's what all of this is now. Not endurance, not faith, not strength. Just refusal. Refusal to be the next cottage left empty. Refusal to let the silence win. Refusal to die before the thaw. You return home in the dark, light no lamp, eat no meal. But as you lie down, you wrap your arms around your ribs, not to hold them in, but to remind yourself that they're still there. And whisper a single sentence into the cold. I am still here. You hear the shouting before you see the smoke. It's not a battle cry, not organised. Just raw, scraping panic. Voices overlapping, boots hammering the lane, and something breaking. You throw on your cloak and step outside. The granary. Of course it's the granary. A dozen people already crowd the path, forming a wide, uncertain ring around the scene. Two men are on the ground, mud-slicked, arms tangled. One has blood on his cheek. The other clutches a torn satchel that's already emptied into the muck. Grain. Actual grain. Soaked. Wasted. A third man stands by the broken door, panting. You recognise him. Lyric, the woodcutter's son. He used to sell kindling, used to sing when he worked. His knuckles are raw, his eyes wild. He's not holding a weapon, just a splintered length of timber. He doesn't look angry. He looks confused, like he didn't mean for any of this to happen. Like maybe he came to ask or knock or just look, but now the door is off its hinges. and someone's called the guards. Oswin arrives first, halberd in hand. Behind him, 2 more men in mismatched armour, one with a padded vest that clearly doesn't fit, another with a dented helmet that covers half his face. They don't shout, they don't rush, they just advance slowly like cold water spreading across stone. Leoric doesn't run. He just steps back, eyes flicking from the spilled grain to the crowd to the halberd's blade. "This wasn't for me," he says, breathless. "I was going to share it. I was going to—" Someone from the crowd throws a stone. Not hard, not aimed to injure, just to start something. Oswin flinches, then the guards lunge. It's fast, chaotic, over in moments. Leoric doesn't scream. He just goes down under boots and knees. Someone in the crowd shouts, "Enough!" but no one moves. Not toward, not away. When it's done, he's still breathing. Barely. The guards drag him toward the manor steps. One of them kicks the broken door shut behind him. Grain remains in the dirt, soaking deeper with every passing minute. You look around and see what you feared most. Not shock, not grief. Just calculation. People are doing sums in their heads. How many guards? How sharp are the blades? How long would it take? Later you hear someone say, "It should have been the Reeve, not Leoric." Someone else replies, "Wait till the next storm. Wood'll burn fast." The voices aren't loud, but they aren't whispers either. A woman behind you murmurs, "One spark, that's all it takes." And suddenly you realize the village isn't crumbling anymore. It's heating, like a kettle just before the boil. That night, the village feels like it's holding its breath. The wind dies down. The trees don't creak. Even the dogs, those few lean shadows still skulking through alleys, are silent. You sit by your window with the shutters cracked just enough to see the square. Not for entertainment, just to know who's moving, who isn't, to know if something is beginning. Leoric hasn't returned. No one knows where they took him, or what happened after the door shut behind the guards. No one asks. But every so often, a glance drifts toward the manor with a tension that wasn't there before, like everyone's eyeing the same piece of ice and waiting to see where the first crack will run. The next morning a new list appears on the square board. It's not a ration count this time, it's names of households, to be inspected for stores signed in the Reeve's cramped hand. No explanation, no apology, just 12 names in red ink, nailed with a dagger instead of a pin. You're not on it, not yet, but you know someone who is. You walk to Marta's at dusk. She doesn't open the door when you knock, but she speaks from inside. "I've already hidden what I could." Her voice is flat but not afraid. "Do you want help?" She's quiet a moment. Then, "Not yet." You leave without pushing. Down the lane, people are walking in pairs again. Not crowds, just twos. Husbands and wives, sisters and cousins, neighbours who hadn't spoken in months. And none of them are talking about grain or soup or weather. They're talking about fairness, or the lack of it. You hear phrases like "never meant to share" and "we built this place," and they think their stone walls will hold. A man behind the mill mutters, "Why do they get to eat just because they own more keys?" By the well, someone ties a length of twine to the beam. A silent symbol, something frayed and knotted, left swaying in the breeze. It's not just one act of protest, it's dozens, piling up, quietly, steadily, unmistakable. And still the guards walk their path around the manor. Torches lit, boots firm, swords in view. Their faces say nothing, but their formation has changed. Closer, tighter, expectant. You feel it in your body, in your breath, in the way your hand lingers too long on the latch at night. It's no longer a question of if, it's when. Because this isn't a village surviving anymore. It's a village calculating who has what, who deserves what, and how long they're willing to wait to take it. You blow out your candle early, eat nothing, sleep light. Tomorrow someone will speak first, someone will strike, and once they do, the famine won't be the only thing taking lives. The morning arrives in pieces, not with the sharpness of a storm or the clatter of hooves, but with a smell. Thick, acrid, slow-moving like it's unsure whether it should even be here. You wake before dawn as usual, and the scent is already curling through the shutters. Wood smoke, but not from hearths. This is different. Green wood, damp thatch, and underneath it, something else, something bitter, almost oily. You pull on your boots, grab your cloak, and step outside. There's a glow on the eastern edge of the village, low, smouldering, just visible behind the tree line. Someone says the word shed, someone else says barn, but no one moves quickly. You all walk toward it like sleepwalkers, like people who already know what they're about to see. It's the storehouse, not the main granary near the manor. This was a smaller one, communal, built years ago after a storm collapsed the old root cellar. Used for tools, for drying onions, sometimes a few sacks of shared grain that never made it to the Lord's ledger. It's gone now. The roof has already caved in, and what's left sends a column of smoke into the morning air. Not flames, just the end of them. The wet kind of fire that never gets hot enough to finish the job. The reeve stands nearby, arms crossed, jaw tight. No guards, no shouting. Just an uneasy cluster of villagers with soot on their boots and silence in their mouths. You see Marta near the edge of the crowd. She's not crying, just watching. Someone says, accident. Another says, sabotage. No one disagrees, but no one confirms it either, because everyone knows this was a message, and not for the village, for the manor. By mid-morning the guards are out in force, 5 of them, 2 on horseback, all armed. They're not chasing anyone, they're not searching, they're just being seen. One of them walks past the old baker's stall and knocks over the crate of ash cakes sitting on display. Doesn't pick them up, doesn't apologise, you don't move. Because now movement is its own kind of declaration. The list on the notice board is gone, torn down sometime in the night. In its place, someone has scrawled a single word in charcoal. Enough. Not in blood, not in anger, just finality. The reeve doesn't replace it. You spend the afternoon helping a neighbour patch their roof. Not because you owe them, not even because you like them, just because you need something to do with your hands that isn't reaching for a blade. They offer you a stale turnip as thanks. You take it, break it in half, leave the other piece on a fence post as you walk home. By dusk the smoke has settled into your clothes, into your hair, into the grain of the wood inside your cottage. You can still smell it when you try to sleep, and in your dreams the village burns again. Only this time no one puts it out. The following morning the air's oddly clear. The smoke's gone. Rain came in the night, washing the last of the soot into the earth, tamping down the ash into a grey smear along the lane. The burned beams of the storehouse still stand like black ribs, but no one looks at them anymore. The statement was made. Now everyone waits for a reply. You know it's coming. But not from above, not from the king, not from the reeve, and certainly not from the manor. No riders have arrived, no proclamations have been nailed, no punishments have yet been handed down. But the people? They've changed. Something settled into them, into you. Not fury, not grief, something heavier, something steadier. A cold clarity, like the surface of frozen water that finally stopped rippling. You pass a woman sharpening her shears outside her cottage, not for crops, not for cloth, just sharpening. She nods at you, you nod back. By mid-morning the granary guards are doubled. You recognise the faces now. Some of them are neighbours, farm hands, coopers, sons of men who used to drink with you. They don't shout, but their hands never leave the hilts of their blades. They look tired, hungry, just like everyone else. The difference is they eat. Word spreads fast. The manor served a full breakfast, bread with lentils, warm broth, even salted fat. A guard lets it slip while spitting in the dust. He thought it wouldn't be heard, but it was. That's the crack. That's the sound. A slow fury begins to build, not with fists, but with footsteps. You see people walking more now, not away from the manor, but around it, past it, mapping it, counting the torches, the walls, the stacks of firewood left unguarded near the back gate. Someone draws the layout in charcoal on a slate board. No one says a word. A boy offers you a pouch of nails. You don't ask where he got them. You offer a scrap of dried root in return. His eyes glitter, not with joy but with agreement, like two people who understand the same plan without speaking it aloud. Later you find yourself at the burned-out storehouse again, alone. You kneel and pick up a handful of soot, rub it between your fingers. It feels like memory now. It no longer stings. You turn to go and find Oswin standing at the path. He looks at the remains, then at you, then says quietly, "This wasn't part of the plan." You don't reply. He walks on. Not long after, someone paints another mark on the Reeves' door. Not words, just a symbol. 3 lines forming an arrow pointed down. It's gone by morning, but the door has a new crack in it. And you realise things won't collapse with a scream. Not here. They'll collapse with footsteps, with hunger, with people quietly deciding that they're done being polite. And soon, no one will remember who struck first. Only that something finally struck. The snow returns, not gently, not as a soft reminder of winter's rhythm. This time, it falls in thick, wet clumps that stick to roofs, weigh down branches, and turn every footpath into a rutted channel of slush and half-frozen mud. You wake to the sound of it, like someone slowly pouring sand onto your roof. You sit up and feel the cold already curling beneath the blanket. The fire's out again. You strike the flint twice before it catches, and even then the flame is stubborn. The wood's damp, but it's all you've got. You feed it a few thin twigs and wait for the crackle to return, like a voice you haven't heard in days. Outside, the village is hushed. Not quiet, hushed. The kind of silence that has weight to it. Boots crunch through the snow with caution. Doors open slower. No one whistles, no one calls. Because now the frost isn't just weather, it's strategy. A thick snow like this dampens everything. Sound, scent, movement. Smoke trails longer in the sky. Footsteps leave perfect prints behind. If anything's going to happen, it won't be subtle. And yet, everyone acts as if they're waiting for exactly that. You see it in their routines. The butcher sharpens his cleaver twice as long, but doesn't cut anything. The miller, whose wheel hasn't turned in a month, keeps sweeping the threshold of her empty shop. Oswin patrols slower now, not out of laziness, but because he's listening with every step. And the manor? The manor is dark. Too dark. The torches haven't been lit since the second night of snowfall. The guards haven't changed shifts in the open. You don't know if that means confidence or caution. You step out onto the lane. Snow crunches beneath your boots, soft and deliberate. No birds sing, no dogs bark. Just that heavy, muffled kind of stillness that makes you feel like the world is wrapped in wool. Near the edge of the square, a figure kneels by the fire pit, the one that's been cold since the storehouse burned. They're striking a flint, again and again, as if trying to summon something more than fire. You walk past, nodding once. They don't look up. Across the way, a child draws in the snow with a stick. Not a game, a diagram, lines and circles, a grid. You don't ask what it means. In the distance, someone drops a pot. The clatter echoes too loud for comfort. Heads turn, then quickly look away. You realise you're all waiting for the same thing. Not spring, not rescue, not forgiveness, just release. And the snow keeps falling, thicker now, draping the village in white like a burial cloth stitched by silence. By nightfall, the white has turned to grey. Snow keeps falling, but now it mixes with soot, tiny specks drifting down from somewhere unseen, painting the roofs like unwashed parchment. You press a finger to the windowsill and feel the powdery smear. Not just wood smoke, ash, burned thatch. Somewhere, something is smouldering again. But no alarm is raised. You wrap your cloak and step. Outside. The wind stings, but it's not sharp. It's slow, like it's being careful not to wake anything. The village isn't asleep, though. Far from it. Shapes move behind curtains. Shadows pace in doorways. People are watching, waiting, staying just on the edge of action. Everyone's waiting for the one thing that will tip it all, and tonight it comes. It starts with the light. Not a torch, brighter, steadier. A golden square glowing from the manor's upper floor. Too warm, too generous. It flickers just once, then steadies. Someone's lit the feast hall hearth. The feast hall. Of all the rooms to warm, word spreads like heat through the cold. By the time you reach the square, a dozen others are already there, staring up at that window like it's some kind of omen. Because it's not just the hearth, it's what it implies. Meat, salt, laughter, and most damning of all, choice. They chose warmth while the rest of you sleep beside frost-lined walls. They chose fire while the snow buries your gardens and gnaws at your boots. No one says it, but every face says the same thing. Tonight is the night. And sure enough, someone moves first. Not loudly, not violently. They walk to the old tannery, return with a bundle of rags soaked in lye. Another carries a bucket of coal still glowing from the baker's dying fire. A third one, not someone you know, emerges with a staff in hand and a length of rope wrapped across his chest like a sash. No orders are given, no names called, just a silent, perfect choreography of people who've waited too long. You don't speak, but you follow, because you know this isn't looting, it isn't rebellion, it's arithmetic. For too many nights the numbers didn't add up. Too few loaves, too many locks, too much taken, too little shared. Now the balance comes. As the crowd crosses the square, more doors open. Figures join from all sides, cloaked, hooded, masked with soot or scarf. Even Oswin is there, halberd in hand, not raised, just present. And when someone presses a flaming rag to the gatepost, he doesn't stop them. The first spark dies. The second catches. By the third, the manor breathes smoke. Still, no one speaks. Because it isn't a riot. It's a reckoning. The fire doesn't roar. It creeps. It finds the dry seams of timber, the straw-packed gaps in the beams, the worm-bitten edges of window frames. It climbs slowly, like it's listening, choosing. Not wild, not chaotic, intentional. From the square you watch the manor smoulder like a beast learning how to breathe. The snow around it glows orange. Smoke curls upward in spirals, not columns. It's not the kind of fire that wants to destroy everything. Just correct something. You stand among 50 others, maybe more, all in silence. The only sounds are the soft hiss of melting snow and the crackle of old wood giving way. No one rushes forward. No one screams orders. You're not a mob. You're witnesses. Then the front doors swing open. Not because of the fire, because someone inside chooses to open them. Out walks the steward, cloak half buckled, eyes rimmed red. He's not armed. He doesn't carry a ledger or a sack of flour. He carries nothing at all, just himself, and a look on his face like he's been waiting for this moment since autumn. He stops at the top step, looks out, looks at you, and then slowly, deliberately steps down. 1, 2, 3. The crowd parts. No one touches him. He walks past the tanner, past Oswin, past the woman who used to clean the manor's floors, now clutching a poker like a scepter. He doesn't flinch, doesn't speak. At the edge of the square, he vanishes into the snow. You never see him again. Behind you, the manor groans. The second floor catches. You see it through the arched window, drapes curling into ember, shadows running along the ceiling beams like memories trying to escape. The roof hasn't collapsed yet, but it will. It's only a matter of minutes. Someone whispers, "The ledger's inside." Someone else says, "Let it burn." You don't add to it. You just watch. Because this isn't triumph. It isn't revenge. It's grief, spoken in fire. You remember the steward's face, not proud, not begging, just resigned. The look of a man who counted every barrel, every salted pork strip, every cracked egg and stale heel of bread, and still came up short. The reeve does not appear. The guards do not appear. No one defends the building, because even those meant to protect it have had their fill of cold. By the time the flames reach the top rafters, someone in the crowd begins to hum, not a song of war, an old lullaby, a threshing song. You remember it. You hum along, and the sound drifts up into the smoke like incense. The flames finally climb past the rafters, and the manor exhales a long, low groan. Wood shifting against stone, beams twisting in heat, iron brackets snapping like bones. You brace yourself, but the roof doesn't collapse in a thunderous crash. It sags. It bows inward like a tired spine, curls slightly, then folds in a soft, hollowed sigh. Embers whirl upward, sucked into the cold night air like stars heading somewhere quieter, and then it's done. The manor is no more. No one cheers. No one claps shoulders or lifts fists. There's no need. It was never about spectacle. It was about enough. The crowd begins to drift, slow as the snow, each person stepping away one by one. Some pause to watch the final glow, some wrap scarves tighter, some take nothing with them at all, not even a glance back. You remain for a moment longer. You remember what this place once looked like in summer. Curtains fluttering, bees hovering in the lavender by the garden wall. You remember how it felt to stand at the back door, cap in hand, waiting to be granted entry just to ask for another ladle of broth. And now, no more ladles, no more asking. As you turn to leave, you spot something sticking out of the snow by the old hitching post. A piece of charred wood, shaped almost like a crossbar. You pick it up, turn it in your hands. It's still warm. You carry it to the edge of the path and press it into the snow like a little monument. Not to the manor, to the moment. Back in the village, things are already changing. No Reeves bell tolls, no notices are posted. But people have begun gathering outside the granary. Not to riot, not to take, but to measure. Quietly, methodically, they weigh what's left. They split a sack. They discuss drying onions, preserving roots. No one fights. Someone appoints the smith to keep the key. Not because he's powerful, but because his daughter gave her winter cloak to a neighbour last week. That's the kind of thing people remember now. You find Oswin near the forge, nursing a split knuckle and a sprig of dried thyme in his shirt pocket. You sit beside him. He doesn't speak for a while, then, "It won't be easier now," you nod. "No, but it'll be hours." And that, in the cold silence of a snow-wrapped dawn, feels enough like hope. The morning after the fire feels strangely normal. No crowds, no shouting, no ash in the air, just a weak sun trying to break through a sky the colour of pewter, and a soft wind that smells faintly of scorched pine. You rise slowly, joints stiff from the night chill, and open your door to silence. Not fear, not tension, just quiet. The manor is gone. Not just burned, but flattened. A smoking cradle of stone and cinders where power once lived. A child kicks snow over the last embers. Someone has already started stacking stones from the wreckage. No ceremony, just the instinct to make use of what's left. You step outside and begin your walk, noticing things you never used to. The missing shutters on the weaver's cottage, the shoes patched with bark, the dog digging under the midden heap. Everything feels raw but visible now. No more pretending. At the village square, a small crowd gathers, but not in protest, in purpose. There's a wooden table dragged from the storehouse ruins, and on it, ledgers, maps, lists, smudged and fire-bitten but legible. The butcher reads them aloud with surprising patience. The miller jots notes with a quill missing half its feathers. The smith tallies weights with his thumb on a bent scale, frowning at his own arithmetic. This is governance now, not decrees handed down, but rough math worked out loud in public. And you're there too, not as a follower, not as a rebel, as a piece of it all. When the carpenter asks how many sacks of rye your lane can spare, you answer honestly, without flinching. When someone proposes distributing oats by household count instead of field yield, you nod. A woman steps forward and says her husband's sick, but they'll trade a copper kettle for stew bones. Another offers to boil linseed and make poultices for the frostbitten. Even the midwife, who hasn't delivered a child in months, shows up with bundles of dried nettle and barley root to trade. It's not utopia, it's not even comfortable, but it's functioning, and that feels revolutionary. You walk toward the granary at midday and find its doors open. Truly open, for the first time in months. Inside, someone has drawn lines on the wall in charcoal. Inventory, rations, a schedule. A new kind of ledger, this one public, visible to any eye that enters. You run a hand across the marks. They're crude, a little crooked, already smudging at the edges. But they mean something. This is what we have. This is what we share. Outside, a child laughs for the first time in what feels like a season. He's chasing a feather on a stick, slipping on the ice but getting up again. His breath fogs the air. His cheeks are red from the cold, not from hunger. That alone feels like a miracle. That night, the cold creeps in again, but it doesn't bite the way it used to. There's still frost on the shutters. Your hands still ache when you pull your boots on. But there's difference now, not in the weather, but in you. Because tonight, when you sit by the fire, yes, a real fire, kindled from shared wood and stubborn flint, you don't sit in silence. You sit beside neighbours. You pass around a bowl of turnip stew that tastes stronger than it should. You sip something hot, even if it's just nettle water, and you talk about how the beams groaned before the roof gave way, about how the midwife still swears she saw a fox trotting past the granary as if it were inspecting inventory, about how, come spring, you'll dig new root pits further from the river bank so the next rains don't flood them again. No one speaks of vengeance. No one toasts a rebellion. Because this wasn't about overthrowing anything. It was about surviving long enough to remember what fairness feels like. You lean back, feeling the heat on your knees and the cold still brushing your shoulders, and you wonder what the next days will bring. Not harvest, not yet, not ease, but maybe something better. Maybe a habit of sharing. Maybe a habit of asking before taking. Maybe the first thread of something that could, in time, be called trust. The fire crackles, and someone throws in the last splinter of broken chair leg from the manor's dining room. It burns fast, so fast you'd miss it if you blinked. But for that one instant, its glow lights the whole room, and you remember what someone said a few nights ago. It won't be easier, but it'll be ours. The door creaks open, and a breath of cold air sneaks in. No one shouts, no one panics. Someone laughs, just a breathy little snort, and gets up to shut it. You pull the blanket tighter and let the warmth settle in your bones. And now, dear listener, let it all go. You've walked the frozen roads. You've stood in the snow-blanketed square. You've seen silence turn to fire, and fire turn to something gentler, something shared. Through every flake of falling frost you've been there, through hunger and reckoning, through quiet revolutions made with ledgers and kettles and sprigs of dried thyme. Let those echoes fade now. Let the cold soften until it becomes nothing more than the hush beneath your blanket. Take a breath, long and slow. You're no longer in the village. You're no longer standing by the fire. The embers dim, the snow stills, the moon passes overhead unseen. You're simply here, at rest. And while the world outside may keep turning, tonight is yours to keep still. Let your body grow heavy. Let your hands uncoil. Let your thoughts drift far, like smoke curling out of a chimney long after the fire's gone out. No more counting barrels. No more waiting for thaw. Just the gentle rhythm of breath, the creak of your bed, the comfort of knowing that even in the harshest winters, warmth returns, not all at once, but in pieces. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's everything. Good night, traveller. Sleep well, and dream perhaps of green things sprouting again, quietly, stubbornly beneath the frost.